Hi everyone, Dr. Sonya Jensen here from Divine Elements, and I just wanted to take a few minutes to talk a little bit about anxiety. And with the holidays coming up, this is a state that I think a lot of us can relate to, and I'm sure many of us have dealt with it at some point in time of our lives and to probably different degrees. So for some, it's going to show up physically, and for others, it's going to show up in our mood, it's going to show up in our relationships. And it can also be hard to differentiate anxiety with excitement because they can feel very similar. But I wanted to go over a few factors that can influence anxiety because I feel like if we have awareness around these different factors, we can look at where they're influencing in our lives and where we can have control over them. So the first one is sugar intake. So the holidays coming up, there's going to be a lot of different dinners and parties and things to go to. So it's really important for us to be aware when the food that we are ingesting and taking in is affecting our mood and is affecting our state. So sugar, when sugar is broken down, we break it down to glucose. And glucose is driven into our cells via insulin. So glucose not only goes up when we're eating like really sugary treats, it's also going up when we're eating processed foods that we may think are healthy. It's also going up when we're processing our grains inside our digestive system as well. So insulin's job is to drive that glucose into the cell so the cell can use it as fuel. But what happens in the brain is that insulin, when it's driving the glucose in, it's actually activating a part of our brain that releases dopamine. And that area of the brain is in charge of motivation, like our zest for life. So imagine you get a hit with something that is in charge of giving us motivation and making us feel really good, and all of a sudden it's not there. What is our body going to want to do? It's going to want more, so it can feed that. And what happens when we don't get it, we have withdrawal symptoms. We get shaky. It's that hypoglycemic effect that people speak to. And unfortunately, there's a lack of understanding around what hypoglycemia actually is and how that initial food affected our brain, and that's why we are reacting, or our body is reacting the way it is. So sugar has a huge influence on what our microbiome is doing, what our bacteria is doing, and how that is communicating with the brain, and that can lead to symptoms of anxiety. Serotonin, which is a neurotransmitter that helps our nervous system relax, is produced in our gut. So if the microbiome in our gut is not being fed what it needs, the prebiotics and all these things, it's from vegetables, from fiber, we then have a lack of serotonin for the brain and for our nervous system. So that's one way sugar, or two ways sugar is affecting our mood and our state of anxiety. The other one that I want to speak to is stress. We all have stress. Stress is in our lives. It really is dependent on how we respond to that stress, and that is how our physiology will respond. Our body is doing everything and anything to help us survive in every moment and every experience. So it technically can't tell a difference between us, taking our kids from school to a different activity and having to get the Christmas present for the teacher and doing all these things every day, to you actually being in danger. So we have to gain tools that will help relax our nervous system so we're not responding with that adrenaline rush, with that cortisol rush. Because that cortisol comes from progesterone. So progesterone for women, it's anti-anxiety, it's antidepressive, it helps us thrive. It's our thriving hormone. So again, I've talked about this before, if we're in a state of survival, we cannot thrive. So if we are low in progesterone, and many women that are maybe transitioning into perimenopause, menopause, will be able to relate to this, our sleep is affected. And the sleep is affected because naturally our progesterone is starting to go down even further than it already has. Starting age 25, progesterone is starting to take a dive. And if we have a lot of stress in our life, we are continuously depleting those stores of progesterone because they're getting converted into cortisol to help us through that experience. And the body will try to speak to us through provoking these symptoms of anxiety to tell us that something is off. That irritability that you're feeling 2 weeks or 1 week prior to your period, progesterone is off. Something is off and we need to do something about it. The third one I want to talk about, the third S, is safety. So I'm reading this great book called The Choice by Dr. Edith Eger, and she is a Holocaust survivor. And it's been amazing to really dive deep into her story and how she has helped herself respond, how she has helped her mind shift her perspective on life. And it goes through this, series of events that she went through and how she was able to gain tools from it instead of being a victim of it. So one of the things that I love that she refers to is how we can create a prison in our own mind. So we have a choice in every moment. We are either going to gain freedom with the thoughts and the beliefs that we have, or we're going to create a prison within our mind. And one of the things that her mother had told her was that no one can take what's in your mind. So I think if we continuously remind ourselves that we have a choice in every moment, because a lot of our decisions are based on wanting certainty in our life, wanting to be safe, wanting to have control over what's going on next. And when we don't, we feel like our safety is being tackled in some way. So if we can create a routine or create a tool that we have every day, whether it's breathing or meditation or just reflection, that can allow us to reflect back on the movie that we're playing in our minds, that can then help us when we are in that state. Because we do get into that state. We're human, we're having a human experience, so anxiety will show up. But what we do with that information is totally up to us. We have the freedom. So I hope with this video, if you could take one thing away, is that you always have a choice. You have a choice to be free of your mind, and you don't have to be a prisoner to it.